Welcome to Homesroom. Just like Homeroom, we start off our day getting together with our homies, swapping stories, even a little kiss and tell action. This podcast contains language not suitable for younger listeners, topics about sex and mental health. Discretion is advised. Our views are our own. Let class begin. Welcome back to Homesroom. Honestly, this is the first time for me that I'm at a loss introducing a guest. You do so much, and I wasn't sure what to include and what not. So what I will say is, welcome to the show, Sunshine. A psychic medium, soul healer, a podcast host. What else is there? Because there was a whole lot when I was looking you up.
Yeah, there is a whole bunch. So my quick intro is always, I'm Sunshine, the pink-haired psychic medium, high priestess, Reiki master, and headmistress of Illuminate the Unschool of Witchcraft. But yes, a whole slew of other things and titles and labels that people love to recognize me as, because it's a way to connect, right? I mean, I don't care about the labels, but when you put a label on, people can wave at you and have something that they relate to. And I would say probably one of the other things that I don't always mention on a lot of times when I'm a guest, I actually have a corporate day job too. So I'm a certified product manager. I've been helping corporations build software for well over 25 years and actually lead teams and, help with operate. Yeah. So I have many hats and love every one of them.
Well, like I said, it was I was at a loss because it was if I don't know what direction are we going with this episode, and what things do I include in off the break, and in what things do I ask about later on. But I do want to ask, just because I'm not super familiar with it. I'm familiar with it enough to have been oh, I want to try and get this person to do an interview when I saw your profile. But can you tell us a little bit about soul healing?
Yeah, from a soul healer perspective, my own personal belief is that when we walk on this earthly plane, our own soul has been here many, many, many times before, right? So souls continue. I believe in reincarnation. And when we walk on the plane in this particular lifetimes, there can be things that we are carrying from our past lives that are impacting our life today. And I'm going to give you a perfect example that I run into very frequently, is this agreement that someone may say in a past life. They have a broken heart, somebody's betrayed them, somebody's cheated, whatever it may be, and they will proclaim to the universe, I will never love again. I will never love again. I'll never give my heart away. And then they come and they sit down with me and they're like, I can't find a partner. And every time all my relationships. And so we go and we'll look into past lives, and lo and behold, I'll stumble upon this contract. That's what it shows to me. It shows as a contract that they have made with the universe to, in essence, never allow their heart to connect to someone else again. And so we go in, and from a soul's perspective, and I go in and I provide the healing. I break the contract. I provide healing. I look at other lifetimes to make sure that there hasn't been damage created that can continue to come into this lifetime. We provide the healing that is necessary so that they could, in this example, open their hearts up and receive the love that they're meant to receive in this lifetime.
Yeah. I like that example, specifically because I guess I've had two aunts who do something similar. They both called it different things, and I do not remember at all what they were called. But one of the things that I also grew up hearing from my family, who is from the South, is, however long ago, a witch doctor or something cursed our family to never find love because we stole his lovers, from whatever. And it's always been such a funny, joke between cousins and whatnot, because a relationship will go sour and it's man, maybe there is something to this. And I've had enough other plainly experiences to believe fully solidly that there is way more to the world than what we see, what we perceive on a normal everyday basis. So having conversations with people like you that are open and that are, willing to share their point of view, it always like it jazzes me up because it's like I know the small amount. It's like the ocean. Like I know a tiny amount, but like you're a wealth of knowledge of other things. So like spiritual healing, anything in that regard is just so like interesting to me because
Mm.
I don't know it. So it's like, oh, I want to learn, I want to hear. And I have enough friends that probably dabble and are in that realm as well, that like it's like, oh, this is something that I definitely would want to learn about, and having that conversation. So I'm super happy to hear from you today.
Oh no, it's one of the things that I adore the most, right? So I'm a certified Reiki master, so I am a healer. But like and this is what I always say with people, right? Why do people sit down with a psychic or a healer or anything of that nature? And I always say, like, when you are experiencing something in your life that you have tried to change, or you've not like been able, right? Whether it's this love thing, maybe it's a money thing, maybe it's a just, I'm plagued by anxiety. I had a client that had an irrational, they could recognize this drastic, irrational fear of bridges, right? And so they've tried, they went to therapy, they've done hypnosis and couldn't figure out how to do this. And so we go and we look into these past lives, and sometimes just the like knowledge that there was something is enough to bring the healing.
Yeah.
Just the knowledge sometimes. So like that particular client that I'm referring to, we went in, and lo and behold, many, many, many lifetimes ago, we're talking about, gosh, I mean, I think for him, it was even before like Christ, he would walk a land bridge daily. And lo and behold, at some point, the land bridge gave underneath him, and he perished.
Yeah.
Hello, rational
Yeah.
fear. I
Yeah.
mean, you're literally used to walking over a bridge day in and day out of your life, and then all of a sudden your life ends because it collapsed, right? And so just that knowledge alone, that he wasn't irrationally afraid, was enough to
Yeah.
start bringing some healing. And it was really beautiful. Like, it took him a while, but slowly over time he kept trying. And yeah, he still has fear of heights, but the fear of it was so bad, couldn't even travel. Like, he would have to
Yeah.
research how to get places to make sure that they didn't have to go over like large suspension bridges or things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that. This is like a random side note, and I don't know if I've ever said this on another episode or not, so like it might be a repeat for some people, but I grew up in Maryland, so like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge is a really, really long bridge over the Chesapeake Bay. Spans from the Maryland side to the Delaware side. And as a family, my dad, my mom were arguing in the front seat. My dad misses the exit, so we have to go all the way down this bridge. And I couldn't swim, so obviously, like, going over this really long bridge, freaking out as a kid, like, oh my gosh, what if something happens? What if something happens? And then we get to the other side, and now, because obviously once you're on a bridge going one direction, that means you have to turn around and come back the other. So we had to span it twice, and here in, like, it could be a rational fear that like my brain, that's so interesting. I don't know, spirituality, brains, energies, all of those things. There's, like I said, it's like the ocean. There's so much to it that, like, oh well, what if?
Well, and depending upon if you talk to the real kooky spiritual folks like me, I also have this belief that like every single thing is, there's even a movie, everything's happening all at once, right? That like time actually doesn't exist, outside of the human construct. And so everything, past, present, and future, is all experiencing and happening at the same time. So when you think of it from that perspective, if you had something in a past life where it was irrational, like, you're literally going through it in this moment, right? Like, in this moment, right?
Yeah.
So it's this real, that's why I love the soul healing so much. Just being able to go and provide that like clarity or visibility to someone of what they may have experienced, providing them that, insight. And, I mean, yes, I am sometimes called to do some pretty crazy healing through it. But like I said, just knowing sometimes just knowing is enough to bring people peace of mind that they're not, crazy. That's
Yeah.
really what it is a lot of times.
Yeah. So the next question for you is, what gets you going about all things witchy, and like, how does that motivate you when you're helping others?
Oh, what gets me going about all these? Depends on what you mean by gets me going.
Like,
Um,
what calls you, like, what calls you to that, and like, that brought you to like lean into that, I guess, that style of healing, that like, what
yeah,
excites you about being able to utilize this thing,
yeah.
and help others with it.
So, I think in order to like provide some context to the answer, um, I have to visit the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic. And so, just over 4 years ago, it would have been 2019, I hit my rock bottom. I had relapsed for the third time that year, and I was on my 40th birthday. And, it was really bad and it was really shitty and it was not a good scenario. And I came back, I was actually on vacation when I hit rock bottom, and I came back and ended up in AA to try to get sober. And so, for anybody that's ever, any of your listeners that are familiar with any 12-step or recovery programs, they are actually spiritual programs, right? They're kind of like, they kind of help you say, like, get out of your own fucking way. You led yourself down this path of, addiction, right? Like, you need to try something else. And so I sat in, I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and I was sitting at the tables with a lot of like, the area that I live in is high population of both Christians and Muslims. And so I've got these like Christians sitting at a table, and these Muslims, and I'm just realizing a lot of these people are talking about their spirituality when it comes to like getting and staying sober, right? Staying, right? Because like I was sober at that point, but like staying it. And so I kind of like took a step back, and I had to like really think to myself about what was my spirituality. Like, really, what did I believe in? What did I want to embrace? And, at that particular time, I I didn't have what I'll say kind of maybe the philosophical approach to my own like, witchcraft beliefs, but I knew that since I was 16, so we were talking at that point like well over 20 years, that I had been walking the path of witchcraft, of magic, of a more esoteric spirituality than I was Christianity or anything else. And so I I decided to create my own version of church, so to speak. And I started sitting down on Facebook and giving free psychic readings away, just as a way to kind of get back. And then lo and behold, the more and more, the longer I was sober, the more days that passed, the more all of this like just fired up. Right. I mean, I started wanting to embrace magic on a daily basis. I started studying more. I started looking at more. And I frankly, I believe the place that I learned the most is through teaching. So I started to teach people these things. Right. And so that, it's like, what fires me up the most about all of this? Number one is it keeps me sober.
Yeah.
Right. It really does. But number two, it's like literally like, giving these other people that I meet, the permission to step into whatever it is they believe. Right. And I don't, it doesn't have to be my version. It doesn't have to be my flavor, but what they see, what they feel, what, what they want to learn, what they want to explore. And that's what fires me up when I see people literally for the first time. And you can like even somatically watch this. You can watch this in their body language. When they finally, that light bulb goes off, where they finally realize and accept that they get to choose their own spiritual path. Right? Like that nobody's going to tell them what to do, that like every way is the right way, right? As long, like Yeah. I mean, that's what fires me up, because I've watched so many people be oppressed through, like, maybe having to follow their family's religion,
Hmm.
or, oppressed because they were following, like, their communities, right? Maybe they've lived in a community that was heavily Christian, or very much, or, what the worst case is like, there is, a lot of, like, Christian practices that will be so, and I always say that, fanatically
Yeah.
Christian. And
Hmm.
I'm like, do you realize how close that actually is to witchcraft? Like, when you are so strong and devout in your beliefs, that's the same thing that a witch does. Like, so watching these people literally start to realize too that their past actually benefits, like their past beliefs, their
Hmm.
past knowledge. I mean, yeah, there's nothing really that quite fires me up than watching those transformations in folks. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that gave us a little bit of context with your recovery, because that actually is my next question. I kind of like paired those together, because for me, my assumption, and this is from personal experiences, when you go through a healing journey, it's hard to not like want to see that in others. So what what those moments bring in recovery, in like a healing of sorts, is this clarity of like, oh man, I wish everybody could feel that way, and I wish I could like bring this feeling to as many people as possible, and help other people in any way that like you feel calls you to be able to help. Would you agree with that?
I wholeheartedly would agree with that, and it's and just in recovery alone, like the 12th step basically states, like, to go out and continue to help other people, heal. But I call it, and the way that I've described it to people is like getting sober and stepping into, like, this spiritual evolution and really being on a spiritual journey. I learned how to fall in love with living, like, to truly, like,
Love that.
love life. Like, even the pain and the suffering, and some
Hmm.
people will think I'm crazy weird for saying that, but, like, life, we do not get to experience the, like, highs, the epitomes and the joys. And, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she's got the Atlas of the Heart book, and she had the series that she did on Netflix, and I loved it. And I always think she talked about the emotions of wonderment and awe, right? And when you fall in love with life, you're like, literally, we talked about that curiosity before we started
Hmm.
recording. Like, you find wonderment and awe in everything when you're in love with life,
Yeah.
right? You really do, right? And so, no, I absolutely agree that when you step into this path, like, you want to bring people along with you. You want to raise people up. The challenge, not everybody's ready,
Hmm.
right? And so you have to be very conscious and careful, because some of us out here are also recovering people pleasers.
Yeah.
And so where we think we're trying to raise someone up, what we're actually trying to do is we're just falling back into,
You
old
know,
habits. So
I love that. And I think that is something that like in my everyday life is kind of evident. And like, this is just like an aside to that, is that I think people that are truly in a place to help others understand that concept that you just explained, is that sometimes people aren't ready, and sometimes people need to be asked, do you need this help? Sometimes people need to be hinted at, like, hey, I can do this thing for you, would that help you or would that not? And it takes somebody that is truly in that place to be able to see that that is even a thing that needs to happen, as opposed to just jumping in and wanting to help. And I think it's almost sometimes detrimental to some when you just jump in and help, because now you're jumping in and helping, your help doesn't necessarily come across right. The person you're trying to help is like, why is everybody trying to help me? I must not be able to do anything. And then you're just like, feeding into this cycle of like not working, as opposed to understanding where you stand on that path for that person.
you're reminding me, I chatted with a friend this morning. She's got a 13-year-old son, and she's running into some challenges with him. And one of the comments that I had made to her was, you have to understand that your son is now in the driver's seat of his own life. You're in the passenger seat.
Uh-huh.
And that's the challenge is a lot of people, they think that in order to help someone, they've got to take the wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And navigate for them. But that's not the case. If you truly want to help someone, you'll never do it for them. Right? You'll
Mm-hmm.
purely sit on the passenger seat and allow, and that's the hardest piece for folks, right? The hardest thing is watching someone flail, watching someone suffer, watching someone be their own detriment, right? And you're like, oh, if I only stepped in, I could help them. Well, in the recovery world, they call that an enabler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
They call that an enabler because people have to be ready for help. They have to be willing to accept that help. They have to like sit in their driver's seat and say, hey, you know what? My eyesight's not so good right now. I don't have my glasses. I need you to help me navigate and read the street signs. I need you to hold the phone and use the GPS, right? They need to be the ones that are asking how they want that help.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Right? Because it's so easy for folks, and I mean, I've watched it as well, where people will step on and start to be on this healing path, and stepping into this, trying to step into this spiritual evolution, and they will, what's the word? Prematurely try to help others.
Mm-hmm.
They actually won't have gone through the level of healing that they need to, right? And that's where I said they'll fall back into those same patterns, and then they'll build resentment.
Yep.
Right? They'll be, why didn't they accept it? Why didn't they like it? Why didn't and I've one particular client that I'm often told, right? Because when I work with folks, I work with my guides, and my guides will tell me, you can't tell them, you can't. So many times I'm told, like, nope, it's up for them to figure it out. It's up for them. And
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Over and over again. So even for me, I'm human. I'm not perfect. Even though I work with clients, I coach, I mentor, I help people, on their own spiritual journeys. I'm still not perfect. But thank goodness, at least I think I believe I've got a little bit of humility to admit that I can't help, or I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Somebody told me, and I did an interview, and I'm pretty sure it was after we stopped recording and we were just kind of chatting afterwards about the interview. But they told me that they saw, my profile on the matchmaker website and was like, I want to talk to that person. And they put out all the positive energy. They said, I'm going to do this interview, and it's going to be a good thing. It's going to, good things are going to come of it. It's, I just know it. And, obviously I didn't know that before we had the interview, but then afterwards we were talking about this very thing, and their response was, I love what you're doing, and I love the essence that is your podcast, because what it is wouldn't be possible if you haven't gone through great healing, and you wouldn't be wanting to have these conversations and giving people the opportunity to talk about their journeys and their healing and spreading that word. And that just like hit me so crazy. And it's kind of like what you're talking about is sometimes you, as somebody that has healed, have to sit back and be like, man, I forgot that like I was in that place and I would not have accepted that same level of help from somebody. So like, I got to remember, even though like I am capable of helping you, I can only help you as far as you're willing to be helped. And you gotta drive the car. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it was my friend this morning. I said that to her. She got all teary eyed and weepy. It's her oldest too. She's got two sons. It's her first time going through it. But like, I mean, it's a true thing with anyone, and anybody that's ever been around someone that maybe has suffered from addiction is going to be a little bit more familiar with the enabling thing. But so many of us, right? Even if we don't have a friend that's actively in like substance addiction, what we'll find is we'll have a friend, and we'll have a friend that's addicted to like being a victim. Mm-hmm. We'll have a friend that's addicted to being, like chaos and drama, right? They're coming to us, excuse me, and they're they're always dropping their problems on our laps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, every time, right? And so it's like we as humans can so easily slide into this role of enablement, into this role of like feeling it's like our responsibility to help, when in actuality our only responsibility is to wait for people to ask for our help.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
love that. I love that. We could talk about that for forever, but I do have other questions I want to get to. I checked you out. I listened to some of your episodes of your podcast, and something you said on a recent episode of your podcast, Witch Please, was about casting an evil eye. And I was curious about, like, you mentioned the signs, and this is one of those things, like I said, as somebody that grew up in, like, I've we used to be very vigilant of those things when there's, petulant style things happening, and it's like, okay, stop, look, and listen. What could this be, and do I need to address it in a different way than just being annoyed? Is it? And I that just hit me so hard. So, like, if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit about what
Yeah, I absolutely. So you use the word evil eye, and that's probably the easiest way for a lot of people to understand. But some of us that dance in the magical world may also refer to it as a curse. We may refer to it as a hex. But like the evil eye is real. Like literally, you could cross somebody on the street and then look at you and cast the evil eye, and then you trip and stumble and drop your phone and crack it. Right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
that's as like
Yeah.
simple as it could be. But yeah, so it amuses me that you're picking this one up because it's been a topic of conversation again this week with me. So my belief is that there are a number of different signs that can show us, right? Because I myself live in a very high vibrational state, right? I practice a lot of gratitude. I practice a lot of I'm just in there. And so what ends up happening when, as an individual human, we keep our own like emotional state, very high vibration. We meditate, we're good, we're at peace of stuff. What'll end up happening is when these curses, hexes, or even these evil eyes are sent our way, what I have found is that they manifest externally around us, right? It can be things like planting something in your garden, right? Like maybe you get a bunch of new evergreens, like right now during the fall, you plant evergreens and realizing they didn't take. It could be a matter of, I know one of the things that ended up happening to me is, I don't know if you're familiar with grain moths. There are certain moths that will, come about because of grain. Well, I had some bird seed, and I wasn't as familiar with grain moths as some other people. Well, lo and behold, this bird seed ended up giving birth to all of these grain moths, unbeknownst to me, and it festered to the whole house, went through my entire pantry, and I'm like, that's weird, right? Like that is not, I mean, bag sealed everything. Like this birdseed should not have done this. I mean, I popped canisters of flour, all sorts, and like there was maggots in one of them. And I'm like, this is not, I have never had an issue with this stuff my entire life.
Yeah.
My entire life. And so I stopped, I paused. I personally asked the question, to my guides. I said, this is very strange. And they said, yep. And that's the answer that they gave me, was because this kind of evil eye or this curse or this hex was coming at me and could not get to me as a person. It was manifesting itself around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing up, my dad used to call it a flesh hunt because it would start out with, like, you stub your toe and it's, not as big of a deal. And because you weren't phased by that, next thing you get a paper cut, and that was more annoying and more like naggy of an injury. But you still keep moving. And then out of nowhere, something that has, like, you've done a million times, shouldn't have been a big deal, draws real blood and is a problem. And those were always the moments where my dad was like, and when that thing happens, you need to accept that you are about to be blessed and stay on your positive path. Do not let those things nag you down, because that's what they're trying to do. They are trying
Oh yeah.
to suck you to a level of misery. Don't let it.
Oh yeah, I mean, because, and this goes the same thing. Like this, before we started recording, we talked about that curiosity mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so last year, one of the things that I did, like in my spiritual journey, was I said I want to be more curious when things are happening to me. I desire to respond with curiosity rather than anything else. Right. And so I can't imagine if we were a year ago before I'd done that, how I might have responded, because this happened. And instead of me being exasperated that I now have to throw every piece of grain out of my, right. I mean, I probably threw away, if I think about monetarily, probably $150 worth
Yeah,
of supplies. I
I
mean,
don't doubt it.
I'm a baker, like,
Yeah.
not that by trade or anything, but I enjoy. So all sorts of stuff tossed, right? I could have gone down the path of, oh my God, waste of money, like, and literally allowed it to kind of spiral. But the curiosity that I had when this happened allowed me to pause and ask the question, like, why is this happening? I mean, and now granted, as a psychic, I literally hear the answer, right?
Yeah.
But if everyone just paused, if something unfortunate happens to you, right? Stubbing a toe, paper cut, ending up with a sprained ankle, right? And you paused and asked, this is curious. Why is this? Why are these series of misfortunate events happening? You might actually have something pop into mind, like a picture of a person, you may have the answer actually given to you. It may become apparent. I'm not going to lie. I'm not over it, Holmes. I came down with COVID 3 weeks ago, which I was told again had something to do with it. Right.
Wow.
So I have someone that is out there that is not the biggest fan of me, which is a bummer, because I'm a very delightful and, really kind person, but they're intimidated by me. And needless to say, there's some stuff in the works to once again combat it.
Yeah. Well, I hope that pans out. Sorry you got COVID too. That's unfortunate. I luckily haven't had to, like, I haven't, unless I was asymptomatic. Anytime I got it, I have not had any signs of having it. And my co-host actually lost her father to a work-related COVID exposure. So like that's something that we definitely, like, we feel when somebody says it. But yeah, hopefully, like you said, there are things in the works and it takes care of that. So I wanted to ask you about your program. Like, is there anything that you can tell me about the programs that you do, that if somebody was interested in, looking you up, what services or what programs you might be able to help them out with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an awesome question. For number one, I'm a psychic medium, right? So you can always work with me one-on-one. I do offer one-on-one sessions. So if anybody ever, a lot of times people will sit down from a curiosity perspective and want some guidance around things that are happening in their life. We talked about the soul healings. Those are other things. Mediumship sessions, as a psychic medium, I can talk to the dead and loved ones that have crossed over. So one-on-one work is always cool there. And that's what I say. Around 50% of folks that work with me actually stumble across me because they want to leverage and use my own gifts and abilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
In whatever way, shape, or form. But the thing that I love, and programs, this is usually what I think of. As I'd mentioned, I'm the head mistress of Illuminate, the Unschool of Witchcraft. And I do have we've teetered on, it's this coming 2024, it'll be a 9-month long program where you can step into the program itself and learn. I look at it as 3 verticals. It's a vertical of psychic abilities and divination, so literally being able to use any of the psychic abilities. It is another vertical around any magical ritual, spell work, or alchemical work, so you get to learn all about that and how to leverage and use that and wield those. And the last is the healing gifts. Both becoming a certified Reiki master themselves, but also exploring other different healing modalities. I personally believe that if we are in tune with our higher selves and we're in tune with the universe, we could be called to heal in ways that we wouldn't even expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those programs, anybody's ever interested, you can always reach me. I love this on all my podcasts. I give out my actual email. I read all of my own personal email. Right. So sunshine at sunshinereadings.com. Or you can check the website out and take a look there and read a little bit more. So yeah, I adore to teach. I adore to mentor. And any one of the classes in the program, in any one of those, are actually available to be audited as well. So you could purchase a seat and audit just one of the classes.
Oh yeah, that's
So
nice.
yeah. It was an idea that I'd had. I had a couple of people that like hesitated because it is a lot, right? It's a little
Hmm.
scary to like step in and, commit to doing something of that nature. So I have had a couple of people audit, but the coolest part that I always love, um, at the end, if any of these individuals that have finished the program choose, they can actually do exactly. They could step in and become a psychic medium. They could be a Reiki master. They could literally create a business around the skill sets that they start embracing and
I,
build.
I love that. I am empathic, and it has always been something that like it, I've I don't know, so a program like that or a thing, and a class, a workshop has always been like a like bucket list thing for me, because it's
Mm.
like learning how to like not just have it happen in random moments, learning how to like see whatever that thing is more clearly, or use it more effectively, rather than like, the way I've always tried to explain it is like it's almost like somebody dropped the phone in the water, and I can hear and I can tell some of the words, but it just doesn't quite sound, or the equivalent of seeing that same thing. So I don't tell this story often to most people, but my grandmother on my father's side, she, when I was younger, I was playing on a tricycle. I went out in the street. Something told her to run upstairs, and she happened to open the door at the exact moment I rolled out into the street, and she yelled my name. So I turned and like luckily stopped just in time. And she loved telling that story, and she'd be like, you ran right back up to me and said, "Grandma, I heard your voice and I knew I had to stop." And flash forward to when she passed, I was she was sick for at least like a week, I think, is like when she was like bedridden at home. And I was laying in bed sleeping. It was probably like 12:30, 11 o'clock at night. I didn't wake up and look at it for the one random time that this happened. I didn't look at a clock. But out of nowhere, I heard my name yelled, and my first name is Matt. I don't go by Matthew. Even my family, when people call me Matthew, I look at them like, don't call me that. She is the only person to ever call me Matthew, and I never said anything about it, because chances are she was going to break her foot off in my butt if I did say something about it. So I heard her yell like Matthew as loud as she has ever yelled my name. And I woke up and looked around, and I was like, "Huh?" And I looked at my wife, and I was like, "Did you just yell at me?" And she was like, "What? No." And like rolls back over. And I laid there awake for a second, and I trying to like process whose voice I heard, what was happening, what it was. And then I went to sleep. Woke up the next morning to phone calls and text messages that she'd passed overnight. And the next day I was just like sitting in her, apartment, as we were all like just kind of there thinking about, the situation. And then it clicked for me that like that was
You
her.
heard her.
Yeah. And I was like, man. And at that moment I was like, I really wish I could like have understood that in that moment better. And like I said, it became a bucket list thing.
I will tell you this. I love that you shared that story, because one of the things that I tell people that are starting on their journey and they actually want, if you have someone on the other side that A, you knew had those gifts, right? So grandma had
Mm.
those gifts, right? But B, you had a close relationship with, start talking to her. I mean it, like
Yeah.
literally start talking to her on a regular basis, like even out loud. You will start to hear her respond. You absolutely will start. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you keep those conversations going, you will start to hear her respond. And here's the difference when it comes to like listening to spirit. And I've talked to a number of different psychics and mediums around this. They will not sound like your voice. So you know how your voice sounds in your head. They
Mm-hmm.
will sound like they will sound like, it might not sound exactly like how she sounded, but it will not sound like so that's how you know. right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. Here's another little trick. This is the like craziest one that I discovered. You will hear other people's thoughts in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
You will not hear other spirits in your voice. So just
Fair. Yeah.
yeah, right. So if you're like, I'm a mind reader too, and I will hear like, yeah, I'll hear other people's thoughts in my voice. But yeah, spirit always sounds different.
You couldn't know this because obviously there's no way that you could know this, but my current residence backs up to a memorial cemetery, but then on the other side of the street, she's actually laid to rest less than like an eighth mile from my house. So that's such an interesting, like when you said, it's like, I don't know that I've talked to her specifically, but I also know that I have heard her, and it's not necessarily, like you said, it's not her voice specifically, but it's like inflection almost, or
Yep.
like the way that sentence is formed, the familiarity of it. And
Yep.
it's like a pause moment of like, did I don't, so I will lean into that more because that's kind of that it's interesting. I like that tidbit because again, like I said, those are the little things that like, oh, I should be listening to that, and that's a little nugget of knowledge that I wouldn't have had before. So thank you for that.
Oh no, you're very welcome. Like not everybody has what you described. Not everybody has someone that would be on the other side that would believe in these things and that they had a close relationship with. The fact that you did is you are right for like accelerating that
Yeah.
in ways. It just I think that's amazing, and I can't wait for the time that you I get an email from you that's literally like, oh my god.
Yeah. So kind of on a similar topic, I guess, of like, losing somebody. We talk about grief often on this podcast, as like I said, my co-host is, she has dubbed herself the girl with two dead parents. But what would you help? Sorry, I have to figure out the wording. How would you help someone that comes to you, trying to deal with grief? Is that something that you?
I mean, yeah, it's something that I have a lot. There are even times, and I have a very different relationship with death, right? When you can talk to and see the dead, like the relationship that you have is it's just going to be very different. And I think from a grief perspective, I don't think everybody always realizes that loss in any way, shape, or form is going to have us experience grief. Loss of a job, loss of a friend, loss of, you want to know another place of grief that happens, loss of childhood.
Yeah.
Loss of childhood, right? Loss of divorce is another big one, right? Loss of what I thought my life was going to be like, right? And so when it comes to grief and like when people do step forward, a lot of the times, you said that you understand that you're empathic. And so a lot of the times the first read that I have is to understand what's going to bring them the most comfort. Sometimes that is, having them connect to a loved one on the other side and getting some comfort, some closure and understanding. And it can help. I mean, I have had most mediumship readings, people, end in tears in all the right ways for all the right reasons, right? But grief is such a personal thing. And so it's trying to understand, even why they may be grieving, because sometimes people don't realize, they think that they're grieving the loss of that person not there, when in some breaths that's the truth. But a lot of times when we have someone that crosses over and passes away, we're actually grieving the loss of everything that could be.
Yeah.
Right. And so, the biggest thing that I try to help with is help people to understand that they're still there. Right. And that sometimes these souls will make the choice. I had a person that crossed over, was a very kind person, was literally described as an individual that was a giver to everyone. And, would extend everything, often to a detriment of themselves. And finally, it was his sister that I was talking to. And I asked him, I said, like, why? I said, why? Like everybody thought you were okay. He died of an overdose. Everybody thought you were doing okay. Like, why did you get on this path? And he finally said, and the sister was just so, validated, but so like, he finally said, there were so many people on earth that I loved that I couldn't oversee and take care of all of them alive. I knew I could do better and help more if I was on the other side.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, right? And so, from a grief perspective, it really depends, how I help. It depends on, how my guides advise me to help, because sometimes people are that grief is that in that denial stage, right? And so, it's a different conversation at that point. But yeah, I will help people in, I even how I mentor, like, there are two things. You're trying to have someone, when they walk away from a session with you or talking to you, you either want them to have the clarity that they need so that they can move forward, or the comfort that they need so they no longer hold on to what's troubling them.
I love that.
Right.
That's a good stamp on it. So my, I guess not last question, because there's the this or that questions coming up, but one of my last questions for you is, what things should people know before jumping into like shadow work or anything witchy or anything spirit? Like what should they, I guess, understand before doing anything like that?
I would say the number one thing to understand is, and I'd kind of said it before as to what fires me up. You get to decide your own path. And so anybody that wants to step into the spiritual path of like witchcraft, magic, and things of that nature, it is not going to be uncommon that you're going to stumble across what often people refer to as a gatekeeper. Somebody that tells you that there's one way, it has to be this way, it has to be that way, you're not doing it right, it's not going to work, and so on and so forth. And so like that is so counter to being on a spiritual evolution, so counter to embracing our spiritual rights. That's an interesting word that they even just popped into my head. Spiritual rights.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the biggest thing, is just know that you are the only individual that gets to decide what works for you. And the second thing that I'll say is, this is what I tell people. You can change your mind. Just choose something. Just choose to walk some kind of path, right?
Yeah.
You can change it at any time, right? So many people I'll hear this commentary around, I'm not being very good at it. I've neglected, and I'm just like, life is not about perfection. It's about just choosing what you want, choosing to what you believe, choosing what you want to do, and let go of the guilt and the shame that we like to apply on ourselves.
Yes, 100%. That is, if I could have a tagline, it's live life shamelessly, and that is something that like my my new, I don't want to say goal, because that, like, it's not a goal, it's just the path that I want to try and walk. And again, this is something that you probably couldn't have known, but I just got the tarot card Sun and Moon tattooed on my arm because I looked when it was a Friday the 13th like flash thing, and I don't set New Year's resolutions, I set New Year's goals. So if I don't reach them, it was a goal I'm trying to reach. I don't have to do it in a year, I just have to reach it at some point in time. Was to be my authentic self more often, and to hide less about myself. And then I saw that and I was like, well, before I like get tarot cards tattooed on myself, let me go look up what these meanings could be. And the first one that popped up was, when it's displayed together, it's essentially illuminating things that you may try and keep hidden on, as in dark side of the moon, sun lighting it up. And I was like, well, that's kind of like perfect. So I guess I'm gonna get that. So like living shamelessly and being authentic to who you are. Like another thing that was said in a recent interview was, I asked were you always this open? Because like you're telling me so much now, or, did it happen after, an experience, or what was the case? And their response was, I was only as open as I knew myself. And that just like struck a chord with me. And it's like, exactly. You have to discover who you are and be shameless about that. So I love what you just said. Like that is perfect. So again, thanks for that, because that is the highlight of what I want anybody that listens to this to know is it's your journey. It's nobody else's journey. Don't be ashamed of like anything. I teach my daughters, like if somebody says you're weird, if I told my daughter she's weird, her response was almost before I could even finish my sentences. Yeah, and because
I always say thank you.
yeah, she started to say thank you too. That's something that she threw in there. She has said thank you before. So it's like teaching them they can enjoy what they want to enjoy. They can be whatever they want to be, and do it in a way that like isn't sabotaging to themselves, or isn't to make somebody else happy, me happy, anything. Like if you're not happy, change your mind. As long as you're making a choice for you, I'm good with it. So like I said,
I will tell you this, if anybody listening ever wants to see their life drastically change for the better, and are willing to embrace a very difficult challenge to get there, start only doing what you want. Your world will change in ways that you never even imagined.
So again, it's like silly advice, but it's advice that I heard. I wish I could remember where I heard it, but it was talking about like taking control of your life, and it was in reference to a husband and wife who were having like a troubled relationship, and they were like, well, the age old like, where do you want to eat tonight? What do you want for dinner? And their advice was, if you want Sonic and she wants, like Dairy Queen, take her to Dairy Queen, go get your Sonic, and you're both happy, and go home and eat your meal together. And that was just like an epiphany moment. And since then it's been like, yeah, man, like absolutely. Like why I don't have to go get this. You don't have to go get that. We could get what we want and go home and both be happy. And like you're satisfied, I'm satisfied. So like you said, that is the simplest way that you can do that. Just start making decisions and doing what you want. And again, it's almost like a self-cleaning oven where if people are around you and don't like that you are choosing stuff for you, they will walk away and you don't even have to deal with that. So yeah.
Oh, they'll pout, they'll whine, they'll complain, they'll throw some guilt bombs, they'll throw some shame grenades, and you just have to dodge them. Yep. Right? And eventually they'll stop throwing them, and you'll be like, wow, my life is so much more beautiful. This is amazing.
Yeah. Speaking of amazing, what would be amazing is if you answer the this or that questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So this first one, having a 10,000 foot view of life, or knowing that everyone that you encounter feels your positive energy.
The second one.
Yeah, that's what I figured. After I always like try and guess what people say, and that's one of my favorite. Like I was like before, I was like she might choose the 10,000 foot view because you already kind of have that, so it's a little bit. And then I was like, but also like you seem like you're going to be a positive person, but I don't know how bubbly you are in person. I know what I've heard and what I've read. So, but I like that. Hosting an episode or leading a healing journey or a healing session.
Wow, that's a this or that, because I mean I could say that's both.
Yeah.
At one time. I'd probably say hosting the healing session.
Yeah. I was wondering if like that was one where I was wondering if you would be like, well, I can do both at the same time, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. So last one, a cozy night in or a fun night out with your witches.
I'm a hermit by nature, so unbelievably a cozy night in.
Yeah, I feel it. Is definitely like a at home recharge. Yeah,
I take it out on. So I'm actually going to an ecstatic dance tonight. So I am going to have some fun this evening. But that's Friday a healing thing.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So ecstatic dance is actually meant to move energy through you and to release anything that you're holding on to. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little healing tonight through dance.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering those. Is there anywhere, like you already kind of plugged your email a little bit ago, but if people wanted to learn more about you or hear your podcasts, anything like that, where should they look for you?
So you can always visit the website, sunshinereadings.com. From a podcast perspective, it is we're on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast. That's Witch Please, Sunshine's Guide to the Mystical. I also released a second podcast that I've got with I have a co-host with called Deepest Spirituality that released 2 weeks ago. So you can find that on all the platforms as well. I am online, so Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. So you look for Sunshine Readings and you'll stumble across me. I'm certain.
Well, there you go. I just want to thank you again for being here. It was a fun conversation, and I hope that it was enjoyable on your side.
Oh, I adored it. Thank you so much, Holmes.
The bell is about to ring. If you want to drop us a voice message or simply ask a question, you can do that by clicking the link in the show notes below. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It helps more people find us. Theme music by Kinsey. More music available on Spotify. Remember, every day is a class. Go learn something.